Smithsonian Folklife Festival. We've got a good show for you here at the noon hour. And before we get to that, I'll just read a few of our introductory remarks here. The Folklife Festival, which has been going on for over 50 years, is produced by the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and presented in partnership with the National Park Service. The festival strives to maintain an accessible and inclusive environment for visitors of all abilities. If you are in need of accessible seating options or assistive listening during this presentation or any presentation, please see one of the venue manager volunteers, the people wearing the Ask Me buttons for assistance. You can also find out all the information you need at the information booth. The Ozarks program is produced in partnership with Missouri State University, which is where I work. My name is Brooks Blevins, and I'm the professor of Ozark Studies at Missouri State University. The program is also supported by the Missouri Division of Tourism, Arkansas Tourism, the University of Arkansas, Experience Fayetteville, which is in Arkansas, the Wingate Foundation, the Committee of 100 for the Ozark Folk Center in Mountain View, Arkansas, the Ozark Beer Company, Crystal Bridges Arts and Social Impact Accelerator Partnership, and the Missouri Folk Arts Program. The program received federal support from the Latino Initiatives Pool, which is administered by the National Museum of the American Latino, the Asian Pacific American Initiatives Pool, administered by the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, and the Smithsonian American Women's History Initiative Pool. In-kind support comes from Montana Cans and Mountain Valley Spring Water. All right, we're going to talk a little bit today about different kinds of community building and different kinds of communities. Maybe not just physical communities, but communities of interest, common interest. And we've got three people who come from different communities in the Ozarks and from different communities of interest. And so this should be a fun conversation with these people to find out how we build and sustain community. And I'm going to start by introducing our three panelists here, and then we'll get right into letting them tell us about their communities. To my left is Beverly Meinzer. Beverly comes from a long line of shape note gospel singers in the Arkansas Ozarks. A community college science teacher by day, kind of like a superhero thing, I guess. She is also the director of the Rockwell Gospel Music School, which has been teaching the do-re-mis of the 7-note system since 1947. To Beverly's left is Sasha Daucus. Sasha moved to the Ozarks in the early 1980s. She is the director of Golden Light Center for the Healing Power of Nature at Doniphan, Missouri, which is a small town sort of on the southeastern edge of the Ozarks. And there she teaches about holistic medicine and the health benefits provided by nature. And at the end of our stage is Maile Auterson. Maile is a 4th generation Ozarks farmer. She is the founding executive director of Springfield Community Gardens. That's in Springfield, Missouri, where Missouri State University is located. It's the largest city in the Ozarks. And there she has expanded her project into 18 gardens and a hospital farm. And if you're like me, you're going to be interested to know what a hospital farm is. When I first learned about this, I pictured barely ambulatory people in hospital gowns hoeing corn and digging taters, and I don't think that's what a hospital farm is. So I'm interested to find that out. All right, with that, we're going to start in the middle here because that's where I started my questions that I wrote down. So we're just going to start with Sasha. Sasha, could you share with us the story of how you found your way to the Ozarks and how that has played a part in your journey?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So I'm kind of an accidental Ozarker. I was actually studying to become a translator, and my older sister had taken an alternative path and was living at a large intentional community in Gainesville, Missouri. So it was a community called East Wind, and it's part of the Federation of Egalitarian Communities, which is still a pretty thriving network. And I went down to visit my weird sister, I was a fairly conventional person in a little university, little college, and I didn't realize it until looking back, but I came down in May, and in May in the Ozarks, the glades are just incredible. They are just in full bloom. It's such an extraordinary time, and my bus went by a place called Caney Mountain, and I just could not believe how beautiful it was. And then I got to this, they call themselves a community, but I think a lot of people would call it a commune. So they were practicing radical egalitarianism. So they were practicing back in the 80s, what would it be like if all people were equal and there was no difference between gender and there was some efforts made to level economic differences. They had worker-owned businesses, and they were just opening up a nut butter factory, which people might still buy nut butter from Eastern Community. And it was just a fascinating place of idealists who were trying to put those ideals into practice. And I was just sucked into the Ozark-Bermuda Triangle, and I haven't left since. So that's how I got here.
All right, thank you. Maile, we'll go to you. Tell us a little bit about your family background, which is fascinating, as we've already talked about, and its significance in the work that you do now in Springfield, Missouri.
So I'm a fourth generation Ozarks farmer. My family came from New Zealand, of all places. My great-grandfather would write home and say that in the Ozarks, the climate is temperate and the land is beautiful, and all you need is a pack of seeds and a hoe. And so that's how we got here. That's how I got to the Ozarks, and I'm very proud of that. My father lived to be 100, and he taught me everything I know about gardening and farming, and he actually helped me start the first community garden in our town. And because of that, now we have 17, and we do have a hospital farm that I'm excited to talk about.
Okay, all right. And we will get to that hospital farm.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see, Beverly, tell us a little bit about the Rockwell Gospel Music School, which you direct, and your family's personal connection with that school.
Okay, in around 1910, the Izard County, Arkansas Singing Convention, Gospel Singing Convention was formed, and that was a place where people could come and sing new gospel songs. Every year there, at that time, there were about 6 music publishers, and they would publish 2 new books a year, brand newly written gospel music songs, like I'll Fly Away was once a brand new song, Revive Us Again, Amazing Grace, etc. So my grandfather Floyd Lindsay was part of that group of people, and out of that, along with Orgel Mason, Lehman Bone, Dr. Steve Jones, and some others in the community, especially the Brockwell family who donated land for the Brockwell Music School, began to desire a location, a permanent location for a music school. Before that time, the itinerant music school teachers had traveled around on horseback or mule, and they would go from community to share 7-shape note music singing. And then my family helped start the music school along with the Masons, and my mother taught, then I've taught, my daughter teaches now, and we would go back every summer for that event. It was a big family reunion time. We enjoyed it so much.
Okay. All right. Sasha, could you tell us about the Golden Light Center and how that came to be?
Well, Ozarks has been a place that has attracted people with big dreams, utopian dreams for a long time in different waves. And the most recent wave was in the 1970s, and my partner, Maile Auterson, moved to the Ozarks. She just wanted to, start a life that she felt would be more connected for her. That was growing things. And she was a nurse, and she needed to figure out how to make a living. But she promised herself that she would not work in a hospital again. She had not liked working in a hospital at that time. So one thing led to another, and she became a home birth midwife. And she's the one who founded that business, and she named it Golden Light. And she was quite a well-known midwife. She passed away 15 years ago, and I joined her about 10 years after she had established that business, and I began to work in our cottage industry of home birthing, which is how, as a translator, I ended up as a midwife and as an herbalist. So we did that for quite a while. We did home births and then gradually transitioned as families grew up. We transitioned into complementary health care. And then when she passed away in 2007, I was primarily a teacher and a support in that business. Then I began to do more teaching and kind of move it more in the direction it is right now, which is more about connecting people to the healing power of nature and trying to make sure that we have some really good nature and environments left for people to visit and experience.
Okay. I'm going to go out of order just for a minute. I'm going to go back to Beverly, but I'll get back to you. Maile, we're not forgetting about you. Beverly, could you describe the broad community that is built around the 7-note gospel shape note tradition, and how the conventions work into that, and how that community is built?
Sure. So there are several music schools, mostly in the South. One starts in West Virginia on July 17th. We just finished ours a week and a half ago. There's been one in Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi. And another one in Arkansas, and then some others starting along the coast of Mississippi, I understand. So those singing schools, they're called, or gospel music schools, work together, and people then gather for state gospel singing conventions in every state. We have one in Arkansas every October. There's one in Florida in the fall. I've been to the one in Tennessee, the one in Texas, the one in Louisiana, and those happen mostly in the late summer, early fall. And then the National Gospel Singing Convention happens in November, and it rotates locations. This year it will be in southern Arkansas, so I'm excited about that. I can stay in a nearby Holiday Inn Express instead of a long way away. But that's really exciting, and that community builds. Every time you go to a singing, like we had the community singing here yesterday afternoon, that singing together builds a community of people of similar mindset, and new songs are published all the time. Every year, and that just makes a wonderful thing. People also travel to different music schools. I hope you can hear over the next stage. Okay. People also travel and go to different music schools. I've been to the one in South Arkansas. I've not been to any others, but when I retire, I'm planning a music school vacation. I'm going to just travel the music schools and see what they do and just try to enjoy that. On a broader sense, it really brings families together. It's an event in our county where my mother's people will come back. Every year it was the big deal to come home for the closing program of the Rockwell Gospel Music School. The aunts and uncles would bring their whole families. Lauren knows what I'm talking about. And it was like the whole area kind of shut down for that. So that's one way. That's one way that my daughter met her cousins in her generation, and they have become fast friends. They have a group text message thing now going on, and they check in with each other quite regularly and enjoy that fellowship.
All right, thanks. I should mention that the Brockwell Gospel Music folks are here just for, this is their last day today, so if you would like to hear one of their last performance, which is at 2 o'clock, I believe. 2 o'clock in the Picket Parlor. So be sure and come for that if you get a chance. Our other two folks, Sasha's tent is right there, the one with the old church on the back of it, and Maile is just here a little ways back yonder behind us. So be sure and visit them as well. Maile, can you tell us how your community gardens work, how that setup is, and just tell us what you can about that.
Sure. So in 2010, we started with one community garden, and it was so popular, it seemed like everybody wanted a community garden. And in those community gardens, we just take turns telling our food stories and sharing our family stories around really a memory of growing local food. So we started with one. Now in 2023 we have 17.
And then we have 2 urban farms. We have a farm school where you can actually get college credit to go to our 16-hour course. We have a commercial kitchen the farmers can use free, and we have small trucks that have refrigeration so that we can actually go and buy from local farmers. Some of them have been through our farm school, and then we deliver that produce, and that's where the hospital kind of comes in. Our vision has always been a community where everyone has access to healthy local food, and that means patients at the hospital too, and it means the employees who take care of those patients. And so we really have built trust with different organizations. Most of our gardens have, all of our gardens have so many Missouri State University volunteers, so we're really a popular place to volunteer because you get to learn how to grow food and be a part of our community. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we got started, and that's how our gardens work. They're volunteer-led, but we do have 18 full-time employees now. We started out with just me for 7 years volunteering, so I'm really proud of that. And yeah, that's how we got started, and we probably won't stop. We'll keep going.
Okay. Could you describe some of the specifics about the hospital farm? Sure. And how unique that is?
Absolutely. So we are only one of 5 hospital farms in the United States. And what a hospital farm is, not patients out in their robes digging with hose, but it's actually a place where we grow food for the hospital. So we grow food for the hospital, for the salad bar, for the cafeteria, and now we have vegetable boxes for low-income patients for chronic disease, where they actually work with dietitians and doctors beyond their medical visit to start being a part of a community where everyone eats healthy. So it's just a really great thing. I've been asked to speak at Rodale Organics in November so that we can have more hospital farms in the United States, and I can share our story of how we did build that trust to get land to grow food for the hospital.
Okay, thank you. Sasha, when we talk about community in the context of your work, how much of that is a community of like-minded people who are interested in the same things? How much of your work is based on the immediate community where you live, or is there a mixture? Can you just tell us kind of how you build and define community in your life?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and you know, I could go into it in different ways, but I would say the primary way I think I would answer that is that because our Golden Light Center was established as part of this Back to Land movement in the 70s, and there was a lot of people that came in at that time, and we primarily functioned as a midwives to that group. Now, not only to that, one of the things I learned about as a midwife is that at least at that time, because it was home birth and it was considered quite unusual to want to have a child at home, then what I found is that we really served like both far ends of the bell curve. So either we had people who were very, very progressive and left-wing, or we had people who were very, very right-wing. So, but we were really more centered and more left-wing and progressive side. And because really these people were and are immigrants into the Ozarks, they weren't so established in, say, some of the cultures that Maile would be in. And so we created our own culture. And of course, a lot of people have left, but some people have arrived. There's been babies. And that culture has also actually stayed fairly stable. And one main connecting point of it is a conference called Ozark Area Community Congress that meets once a year. And it's really not a conference. People don't so much go there to learn, although there is learning that happens there. It's more like what Beverly was talking about. It's kind of a family reunion where you go, and I know how I feel. I feel like, because I get along with my neighbors and I like my neighbors, but I am quite different from them in many ways because of the way I look at life. And after a year of being there, you start to think, maybe there's something a little bit wrong with me. And as hard as you try to do that, I think that's hard for most of us to not feel a little bit that way. And then I go back to oak and I think, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just a little bit different, and I'm good different. And then you go back out in your communities. And so I think there's kind of layers and circles of communities, and for me, this oak is my kind of tribe or family. And then there's other ways that because we have our own distinct approach to life, then we come out and we influence our communities, our bigger communities, in the ways that they are open to being influenced, in ways that we can be of service.
Would you like to talk about any of those other specific ways? Because I'd like to, besides oak, I'd like to hear those.
So our primary presence in the larger community has been as healers, and my partner was a midwife, and I supported her in that practice. But I come from a family of teachers, and so it was very natural for me to start teaching. And again, in the 80s, it may be a little hard for a lot of people to comprehend. It was very, very difficult to find information that was quality information about teaching with herbs. And because I was uniquely situated, first of all, I have an attraction and an affinity with plants. And second of all, I was in a healing practice with a very skillful and intuitive healer. I was in a kind of a unique situation where I was able to gain expertise around herbs at a time that it was difficult to gain that expertise. And I would not say that I'm self-taught, but I will say that I'm very self-motivated. And so there were things that I how do you say, there were walls I needed to break through, and one of my first one was that I'm just an ordinary person, and I'm not the kind of person who should make medicine. I had information about how to make a tincture. It's super easy to make, but it took me a really long time to actually take it and do it. And once I learned that, I thought, wow, it would be so helpful for people if I could cut their learning curve, if I could just stand up in front of people and say, look, here's a jar, here's some plant material, pour some drinking alcohol over it, shake it a few times, and you're on your way. I mean, that will cut people's learning curve, and coming from a family of teachers, that was very natural. And so I would say that my main then interface was around trying to make those sort of medicines accessible to people.
Thank you. Beverly, I'll ask you something, and you've already touched on this a little bit, and this may be something you don't want to elaborate on it anymore. And if it is, just tell me, and I'll go to the next question. But my next question for you was, could you give us a sense of what the Brockwell Singing School community, even though it meets just 2 weeks a year, what that means to you personally? Or is that something?
No, I think I can answer that a little bit more. So when I first went to singing school, we just call it for short, my mom was a teacher. My dad had passed away. He'd been killed in an accident. So we stayed with my grandma Floyd, my mom's mother. As I said before, all my cousins came in. We would meet after music school, and we'd always ask Cousin Roy to play the piano because he really had that good Southern gospel music style in his fingers and was always ready to share it, it seemed like. And so I went and made friends. I met Loyanna and her brother and other people. And the community that is built because of that just seems like it gets better every year as we get older. Even though we meet for 2 weeks in June now, we go back and we sort of pick up where we left off. With today's technology, we do have the ability to really communicate without those long distance calls through Maile Bell, anymore. Those huge phone bills we used to have, we don't really have that anymore. So we do have some more communication throughout the year, but there was a time when I could not go to Brockwell because of my job, and I lived out of state, and it was just like part of you died. It was like, I can't believe I'm not there, or maybe I could go just for the last couple of days. And I remember thinking about that and going, my goodness, I've got to save my vacation next year and really make that happen, because it's such a grounding area in a way for me. Kind of brings me back to center, if you will, reminds me of my roots and how important it was to my ancestors and their ancestors that they keep the music school going, that they provide a place for people to come and learn music. And many people have come and learned music and gone on to write commercials for McDonald's, the music for McDonald's commercials, or the NBA, or they played with musicians out of Nashville, you know, those big time musicians. I can't name them now, I'd say it the wrong way. But they've really been able to be very successful because of their basic music knowledge they got at music school. Many have college degrees. They didn't have to really work hard to learn their music stuff at college for a couple, 2 years, and they changed everything to shape notes because they could think about that better, and it made it easier for them to learn. So,
yeah, that's good. Maile, you'd mentioned something called a gap farm. Is that right? Could you tell us a little bit about what a gap farm is and what that means for what you do?
For sure. So GAP certification is a USDA certification. It means good agriculture practices. And we are one of only 5 farms in Missouri that has a GAP certification. And the importance of GAP certification is food safety. So if we are feeding vegetables to patients that might be immunocompromised, it's really important to know that the food that they're getting is safe. But also because we have a farm school, we're the leaders in encouraging other farms to be GAP certified because it requires a lot of auditing and charts and record keeping. And so part of what we do is we teach other farmers that you guys keep records anyway. You know when the crops are going in, you know when they're coming out, you're rotating crops, you know when the sun sets, when the climate changes. This is just another line of record keeping. And we're very, very proud of our GAP certification. It took us about a year to get it, but now we can be a leader not only with our hospital farm, but also with the GAP certification.
Good.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow up, Maile, too, with the community gardens. You mentioned that the hospital farm food goes to the hospital.
Yes.
You've got all of these community gardens. Can you tell us where that food ends up and how that contributes to the building of community in Springfield?
Absolutely. So the thing that when you start growing food, you learn immediately about abundance. You have too much squash. I have people drop zucchini on my porch as a joke quite a bit. So it's very, very important in that abundance to share with your neighbor. In the Ozarks, we have a long history of taking care of our neighbors and sharing what we eat and grow. Today we have 2 produce distributions every week in low-income, low-access neighborhoods, and we've given away over 2 million pounds of fresh local produce to low-income neighbors. So that's an example not only at the hospital farm, but actually our community gardens are sharing with our neighbors. We just share a lot of technical, what we call technical assistance. It's basically teaching somebody how to grow a tomato, right? And so that's another way that we share community and share abundance. Those are 2 examples, 3. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sasha, and feel free to tell me if you don't feel like getting into this, because it's not one of the questions that I had for you. But I'm interested because I know not everybody's familiar with midwives and the process of doing that. Could you tell us a little bit about, is there a certification process for that? How does that work within the kind of broader medical community? How does the midwifery system work?
Yeah, you're right. That is a complicated question. And I wonder if I might be able to take it somewhere else. I'm happy to answer that question for people who are interested. And
tell us whatever you feel like.
Right, and so it's not that I'm trying to avoid it. I just think it might be too complicated to go in a short period of time. But what I would like to say is on the topic of community is that I think having babies is a really strong way to establish a community. So, once people kind of connect, you have a family, you have a baby, and then there's a midwife who comes from a similar culture as you and is born into a similar culture as you, I think that that's a really strong basis for community, because you start to connect a little farther than the family. And you know, when people have kids, it's fine. You know, it's fine in the Ozarks for me to, you know, go into my farm and become a hermit, right? I can just do whatever I want. But you have kids, and then you start to think, well, how good is this for my kids to be like not seeing other people? Now, which other people do I want them to see? Well, I want them to see people that I feel good about, that I want them to learn those values. And so then you start to look for like-minded people, and you're really motivated to stretch a little bit further. In the community I was in, there was a lot of homeschoolers. So those homeschoolers then started to form groups where they would bring other homeschool kids together. And then they maybe reach out to someone like myself as an herbalist. They wanted to bring their kids to learn and take some herb walks. So there's I guess to just say the same thing again, having kids motivates people to reach out beyond their own comfort zone for the good of their children. And then you start to really create a community. And likewise, which is a little different, I've found as I've grown older, I've been in this for a while, that there are a lot of similarities between births and death. And I particularly experienced this when my partner, she got sick, and we weren't able to save her. So finally at the end, there was a moment when I thought, well, we're not going to fix this, but what I can do is I know how to give someone a good death. I'm just going to take in the model of midwifery, and I'm going to take this into a death. And what I experienced through that is very much there's a profound sense of community that can be created when you come together to create the most comfortable, most sacred, most smooth transition as possible. And then in the Ozarks, there's a tradition which probably those of you who've been in the Ozarks longer know about having a family cemetery. And it's quite easy to establish that in the Ozarks. So I have a cemetery now on my land, which was something that was totally not a part of my life before. I think I was one of those people like, well, they're dead. But I can tell you now that the people I know are in that cemetery on my piece of land, although it's not quite my land. You had to deed it to the county. But I have my partner and my mother and my brother and her parents, and it makes a real difference to me that they are there. And when I go on a walk, it's not a, how would you say, it's not a macabre thing. It's a wonderful sense of connection. And I really, once you have people that are buried on your land, you belong to that land in a new way. And then there's more motivation, again, to create community and stretch out beyond your comfort zone.
It's both a spiritual and a literal connection to the land we're dealing with. Yeah. Thank you. Beverly, could you tell us, give us an idea of, I guess, kind of the health of your singing school? Is it growing? Is it something that seems to be really flourishing? And what challenges do you have to make sure that it continues to grow and flourish?
Yes. This year we were pleased to have 126 different participants from ages kindergarten through about 80 years of age, and people look forward to that. We had 30 folks who had never been to such a thing before. We were very excited about that. And we talk sometimes about this community, about how people sometimes meet their soulmate there. My parents did, I did, an aunt and uncle did, and while we're not fostering that, or that's not on our checklist of things that has to happen, it's a safe place, if you will, to meet people that are similarly minded to you if you are so inclined. And so we do supervise quite heavily. We had 15 teachers this year. And so the cool thing about that is that most of our teachers have grown up in this very school. There are four, if you count me, there are 4 of us here that grew up in the school, and we have 2 in the next generation and some others coming on that have grown up in the school. We think they'll come back and teach with us as they get older and learn what to do, you know. I think we're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. because we welcome everyone. We are not a denominational school. We are a Christian school, and we try to treat everybody like we want to be treated and don't throw rocks at people and stuff like that. So everyone is welcome, no matter their religious preference, and I think that's a beautiful thing, that everyone can come and enjoy new songs and learn an instrument if they so desire, and then they can play whatever kind of music they'd like to do or like to play. So I think one of our challenges is that many of our teachers are in the 25 to 30 year age bracket or so, and they're beginning to have families, and so sometimes when you have a young family, travel even just 5 or 6 hours away is a challenge. And then if your child is small, you need help to care for your child while you're working at the music school, because it's a 9 to 3:30 commitment. And while we have relatives around and people willing to do that, sometimes that just may not be able to happen. But so far, we're blessed to have that, and so thankful for that opportunity to have our own come back and teach with us. And there are some others that are coming up that they're ready to do that when it's their time. And a relative who's been away for a little while came back this year, and they're ready to come teach next year. They put it on their calendar. They want to come and help us.
Thank you. Maile, I expect that probably we don't have anybody out in the audience who lives in Springfield, but we have people who live in places where there are going to be community gardens and similar programs to what you do in Springfield, Missouri. Could you tell folks how to get involved in these? What kinds of volunteer opportunities are there? Is it an opportunity to just learn basic kinds of gardening and farming, and just what all there is to do for someone who's interested in getting involved in a community garden project?
Sure. So there are so many assets in a community, and we really focus on those assets. We have about 170,000 people in our town. We have quite a bit of green space, and we have a lot of older people like myself who know how to grow food. So we have master gardeners. We have people like my dad that really can foster that learning around growing your own food. So for sure, they're involved, and we've used that asset. We continue to use that asset in our town, not only to build community, but to reduce isolation and depression and some of the things that we're really struggling with nationally. So to volunteer in our town, you just go to springfieldcommunitygardens.org and you push the contact button, and there's 17 gardens and a hospital farm, and you can show up, and I guarantee you're going to learn something. We're even preceptors for the dietetic college in our town, and they work with us as part of their college training to learn how to grow food and how it's connected to the community. So that's an example, and I think any town you live in, you can go to the community garden and you're going to meet a network of caring people. So I really am an advocate of community gardens for sure.
Thanks. How about we open it up to any of you folks out there who have questions for any of our three panelists about anything we've covered. And we've got a mic, so you can wait until the mic gets to you. And we can all hear your questions.
Just to say that I appreciate hearing from all of you radicals and what you're doing, which is so courageous and so special. And my limited experience just tells me that, like, the herb lady should be working with the hospital garden lady, because I just read a book from India, the north of India. The medical doctor needed an herb garden at his hospital because they knew how to do magic things with herbs. And I certainly hope that it was correct and that it's in our future. And also an Alzheimer's book that I was just told to read by my doctor also talks about diet and herbs, and remarkable. The old is once again new. So I don't have anything to add except that I think the herb lady should be working with the hospital lady, and probably the singing lady too.
Singing, making a joyful noise increases your lung capacity and wards off respiratory illness, I'm told.
That's right. Yeah, and I just want to say you're absolutely right. We have a forager who's here actually right behind me and works with Sasha, and she actually started our test kitchen, and she's one of the best foragers in the nation. And our program is food as medicine, so I didn't use that term today, but the doctors, they know something's missing too. You know, it's not just the community, but they want their patients out working with us in the garden and having a variety of things to eat that is really good for your gut biome, right? And so that's very important to really have a variety of those herbs and vegetables and things like that. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, I have two questions for Molly. One is, what does it take to get GAP certification? Does that mean you're not using chemical pesticides, or does it mean you wash the food first before you distribute it? And then with these community gardens, is it like there's one big garden and everybody works it, and the food is, here's your share and here's your share? Or you sell it, or does like each family have their own plot of land and they grow their own vegetables there, or is it a combination of both?
Sure, thank you for those questions. So the first one, we are GAP certified. We are certified naturally grown. That is not certified organic, but we are working towards those standards, and we encourage people to be what's called certified naturally grown. So we use naturally grown. We don't use chemicals on our vegetables or anything like that. But the food safety certification is to make sure that the water is clean, that there's, when you're putting the vegetables together for sale, that there's covering, for instance, over you, so that you're not getting, bird droppings and things like that in the produce. So it is not organically certified, but it's really focused on food safety. Right, so just washing your hands, all those things that we need to really teach, even our community gardeners learn those GAP practices. So they do not encourage manure, that is correct, and we do not use manure in our soil. That's right. We use really green nitrogen, other crops, and we use fish emulsion. We will use a fish emulsion on our soil. And then your second question, we are very democratically led. They're volunteers putting in thousands of hours, and so the garden leader kind of really, and the co-leader, they get to decide really how the garden is run and designed. We might help them with the design, but they decide if they're going to grow in rows like a farm where they all eat together and they harvest together and they decide where they give the produce away. But then one of our most popular gardens has 65 4x8 plots for the Chin community, and they have their own plot and they just want their own plot. And it doesn't mean they don't share, they just like to have that the sovereignty or the individual plot, around growing food.
Okay, we have time for one more quick question if anybody has one. And if you don't, I will just ask for any of you who wants to answer this in a minute or so. We've talked about the Brockwell School having people of all ages attending, from kindergarten up into their 80s. How do you see your communities interacting with young people, teenagers, younger people? Is that something that you're bringing into your community in a sustainable way right now? And just whoever wants to tackle that can, or you can take turns.
Yeah, I can just talk real fast. We have a 4-H youth camp, and so absolutely, and actually the theme of the 4-H camp is farming careers, and we do that for 2 weeks every summer. So we have a youth program in our programming.
Okay.
Yeah, we're also, I was really interested. I wasn't going to the Ozark Area Community Congress for a while. When I came back, I was interested to see how many young people there are. And I think we're attracting another wave. So there's kids that are born within the group, and then there's also an attraction of kindred spirits who are younger.
One thing that we do is, as manager of the school, I make sure that all of our area elementary and middle schools have information about when the music school starts. I work with their music teachers. We even had 2 school music teachers come and teach in the music school this year. So that way we're getting the word out and they hear about music school at school all the time.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Remember, one more performance by the Brockwell folks, 2 o'clock at the Picket Parlor. You can find Sasha right over here and Maile right back there. And let's give them all a hand.